She has a snake's tail in this. This is a new one on me. In the ancient tradition, we don't read about Medusa actually having sort of the body of a snake as well. She's usually on 2 feet.
Who has the eye? I do. Give it to me now. I want to be the first to see him. A young man, not a plump.
I'm rather excited, it seems, at the approach of Perseus. In the Greek myth, they also shared one tooth. So here they seem to have their own teeth, maybe not the best teeth, but they've got their own teeth. Behind those eyes, those lovely blue eyes, I think, are actually quite nice, they're quite sweet. Calibos is an invention. This whole part of the film seems to be based on nothing ancient that I can identify. I wonder what he's doing here. Welcome back to History Hit. I'm Dr. Daisy Dunn. I'm a classicist and an author, and I've written books ranging from Homer in the ancient world to a book called The Missing Thread, A New History of the Ancient World through the women who shaped it. Something else I've really enjoyed doing in my career is compiling a collection of Greek and Roman myths. Which I called Of Gods and Men. And I mention this because it's into Greek myth that we are plunging this afternoon, because I am taking a deep dive into the film Clash of the Titans. Revisiting this film, I'm wondering whether I'm going to find this film very naive.
Don't worry, my little friend. Tallow will take you.
Compared to what I'm used to seeing. And I'm also curious as to how closely it adheres to the written versions of the myth that we have from the ancient world. But I'm going to keep a completely open mind, and I think let's just dive in. So we've got some soldiers here who are carrying something by a coastline. Very, very wild ocean. And who is this?
Bear witness, Zeus, and all you gods of high Olympus. I condemn my daughter Danaë and her son Perseus to the sea.
Okay, so this looks to me, this is a man named Acrisius, who is a mythological king of Argos in Greece. He looks very, very angry, and he seems to be putting his daughter and grandson aboard something that looks a bit like a boat, or is it a coffin? Let's have a look.
Her guilt and sin have brought shame to Argos. I, Acrisius the king, now purge her crime and restore my honor. Their blood is not on my hands. Now!
Okay, so this opening scene is actually quite puzzling unless you know the backstory. King Acrisius, as I mentioned, back in time, he had been desperate to have a son, but he hadn't been able to. And so he called upon the Oracle of Delphi, and the priestess at that sanctuary had told him that he needs to beware any child born to his daughter, Danaë, who we're seeing being locked up in this chest-like thing, because that boy would grow up and kill him. So in order to save his own life and protect himself, King Acrisius had confined Danaë to a bronze chamber and kept her under close guard, so there'd be absolutely no chance of her falling pregnant. However, what Acrisius hadn't counted on was the fact that Zeus, the king of the gods, was really, I think we'd say, sexually incontinent, and was really in the habit of changing shape and donning disguises and transforming himself into different shapes in order to seduce young women. And in this particular case, what Zeus did was to pour into the chamber in which Danaë was kept in the form of a shower of gold. And so he poured in, and Zeus never missed. So he got Danaë pregnant, and she bore his child, who's Perseus, here. And I think what's sort of interesting, we've got Acrisius talking about her guilt and her sin, because he didn't actually believe that this was the son of Zeus. He didn't believe the story at all. So he's now putting her and the baby out to shore. And I think this contraption is quite interesting because in the Greek sources that describe this myth, usually the word used is the word for a chest. This to me looks a bit more elaborate than a chest. It does almost look like an ark. And I wonder why they've chosen that. I'm thinking perhaps it might be because they're wanting to show how it is that these two are going to wash up on land. They're going to wash up on an island, the Greek island of Seriphos, rather than just fall to the bottom of the ocean. So I think that's why they've depicted it in this quite elaborate way. So they're floating along this rather tumultuous sea. Actually, what's going to happen is they're going to be okay. They're going to survive this ordeal, unbeknownst to Acrisius for now. Wow. Okay. So in that opening scene, we saw a seagull, a seabird of some kind, swooping over the waves and almost watching this horrible ordeal taking place. That bird now transpires to be one of the Olympian gods. He's just been transformed from a bird, and this must be the Greek god Hermes, the messenger god, also known as Mercury in Roman mythology. And presumably he's arriving back onto the peaks of Mount Olympus.
As we feared, King Acrisius of Argos has abandoned his daughter and her child to the sea.
And he will be punished. Cruel and ruthless crime. Blasphemy. How dare the tyrant pray to me to forgive his savage jealousy and cowardly revenge?
So Zeus is absolutely furious that this is what's happened to Danaë and her son. And I think rightly so. I mean, this is the son of the supreme god. Zeus is the king of the gods. Nobody should be trying to kill any son of his. What's also interesting is actually, if you look back to Homer in the Iliad, Zeus actually references his relationship, if you can call it that, with Danaë, and he, in his typically sort of lack of tact manner, tells his wife Hera that he actually quite liked Danaë. So he seems to be probably angry on behalf of them both that this should be happening.
Acrisius has always shown devotion to the gods of Olympus in the past. He has built many magnificent temples and dedicated them to you, great Zeus.
That's an interesting aspect. So you've got Hera here, who is the queen of the gods, effectively. She's the wife of Zeus, and she's actually sticking up for Acrisius, and she's defending him. And I wonder if that derives from, there's a tradition historically where she was actually the patron goddess of the city of Argos, the city that Acrisius is king of. So it makes sense, actually, that she should be defending him, sticking up for him against the wrath of Zeus.
Or do you, Hera, my wife? Or to Thetis, lovely goddess of the sea? Or to you, Athene, ever wise and full of care? Or to Aphrodite, goddess of love?
I quite like this depiction of the Olympian gods all together in some kind of meeting, because actually we often read about them in a similar way to this in the poetry of Homer. We find the gods having meetings, having discussions, having arguments, often all together on Mount Olympus. And they've all been shown with their attributes. So Athena, goddess of wisdom, is there with her trusty owl with her. We've got Ursula Andress, still in white, playing Aphrodite, the goddess of love. That seems quite amusing, quite fitting. The one confusing thing at this stage actually is having Thetis here in this company, because Thetis wasn't traditionally one of the Olympian gods or goddesses.
She doesn't even go here.
Do you even go to this school?
She was a nymph, a sort of a sea goddess of a kind, and she doesn't really sort of belong in this set of people. She's been played by the wonderful late Maggie Smith, and I'm curious as to why she's here.
Hi there, I'm Dan Snow, and if you love history, you know that History Here is on a mission to bring the past to life. Every week, we travel the world to film original and in-depth documentaries. And now History Here has launched a YouTube membership to give you access to even more films released weekly. You heard it here first, folks. Join now to make sure you never miss out on exclusive documentaries on topics like newly discovered shipwrecks or the clash of gladiators. We cover all periods, from Pompeii to D-Day, Click the join button below this video and see for yourself what History Hit has to offer. We can't wait to have you join the team.
Can wipe out or forgive this one contemptible act of blood.
Does it matter? The death of a girl and her child.
Girl? His daughter!
After a lifetime's respect and devotion.
Enough, I've decided. Acrisius must be punished, and his people with him. My Lord Poseidon, I command you to raise the wind and the sea, destroy Argos, and to make certain that no stone stands, that no creature crawls, I command you to let loose the last of the Titans. Let loose the Kraken!
What? This is unexpected. This is bizarre. We've got Poseidon here with the Olympian gods. Fine, that's great. Zeus is referenced about the last of the Titans. So traditionally in Greek mythology, you have something called the Titanomachy, which is a battle between the Titans, who are this kind of older class of gods, and the Olympian gods, who we've got here in this scene. And the Olympians won, and so they got control over the universe. So Zeus seems to be suggesting that they missed one. There's still a Titan out there lurking somewhere, and he's called the Kraken. And this is completely baffling to me as a classicist. The Kraken has absolutely no place in Greek mythology whatsoever. The Kraken is a Scandinavian folklore figure. He seems to sort of crop up particularly in Norwegian literature from sort of the 18th century onwards, particularly sort of popular from that period. I can't quite understand why Zeus would want to refer to the Kraken, but let's have a look and see. Oh, Poseidon. Okay, so I stand corrected. That figure at the beginning, the winged bird who was transformed into a god, wasn't Hermes, should be Hermes, because that's what Hermes did. It's actually Poseidon, the god of the sea, which is very, very confusing and very unexpected. That isn't a form that you'd expect to see Poseidon in. So we're now back with King Acrisius in Argos, and we've got Zeus watching him from above, and he seems to have a model of him. And he seems to be crushing him. This is quite an interesting depiction of the idea of the gods being puppet masters of humans below. In the traditional Greek mythologies, in the ancient texts, we don't really find the gods playing with men literally in that way. They don't have this kind of voodoo control of them. They don't have sort of models of them they're actually crushing. But this is a kind of cinematic representation of the idea that the gods are controlling and they have complete autonomy over what human beings are doing on Earth below. Gosh, okay. Zeus has now decided to punish not just Acrisius, but also his entire city of Argos, which is quite an elaboration of the myth. We don't really find Zeus being quite so vengeful towards the entire city like this. But what I'd say in defense of this aspect of this film is that a lot of the time gods could be very, very vengeful and take out their wrath not just on one person but on a broader population around them. So you do find that, and myths themselves are very, very fluid things. They're very changeable. A lot of authors brought their own interpretations to them. So I think that in itself gives some artistic license to the filmmakers here. So if they want to destroy the whole of Argos to show how vengeful a god Zeus was, I think that's totally fine, actually. Whoa, okay. So this must be the Kraken. At first sight, it's looking scaly. The Kraken in Scandinavian folklore is a kind of octopus-like creature. This isn't giving octopus to me right now. This is looking much more like a shark or something reptilian, almost. Poseidon here, god of the sea, releasing him. And Wow. Okay, so here is the Kraken in all his glory is probably not the right word. I think looking at this creature, it reminds me a little bit of a different kind of sea monster that we encounter on ancient Greek vase paintings. And we find this sea creature which is almost snake or dragon-like with scales on its back. And we call it the Cetus or Catus. And I'm wondering whether that is the sea monster that they mean, but they're using the name Kraken instead. I'm not quite sure why they would do that. Okay, so he's moving along. I'm already appreciating these Harryhausen effects, I have to say. So this is almost like a dual attack by the sea monster, the Kraken and Poseidon, upon the city at the demand of Zeus. And I think it strikes us today particularly as a very strange form of divine justice. Should the whole people of Argos have to suffer just because one man, their king, has done something which the gods disagree with, they realise is improper, it's immoral. So in terms of its kind of temperament, it seems probably quite fair, probably quite accurate to the way that gods were portrayed in the ancient sources. Complete panic here. I mean, this is almost like this sort of disaster movie aspect here, just in this one scene. We've got statues falling, we've got the whole city being overtaken, it's a complete deluge, and people are just, oh my goodness, being struck by the masonry. I mean, for 1981, I have to say these are very good effects, I think. Okay, so now the Kraken is retreating. He looks kind of different underwater, back into his prison-like cell. And there's the scene of devastation. And I mean, it seems unlikely that Acrisius will survive from that. In the Greek myth, certainly he does survive. He isn't wiped out at this point. So it would be interesting to see how they sort of pick him up again. Will we see him again in this film?
Now then, my young friend, you say your name is Perseus, heir to the kingdom of Argos?
Yes. But up to now, I've lived all my life in Seriphos. Someday I'll return to reclaim Argos. You see, after I was born, my mother and
I know all about it.
You do?
Certainly. I mean, the beautiful princess and the jealous tyrant, and you and your mother thrown into the sea, and the destruction of Argos. Why, it's been a most popular story here for the past 20 years. I myself wrote a poem about it.
So we've got Perseus suddenly all grown up. He's looking strong, he's looking valiant. And he has been magicked away from Seriphos, where he was happily growing up. And he's found himself in a place called Joppa. And Joppa is a real place. Historically, we've sort of called it Jaffa, perhaps more often, and that's located near Tel Aviv. What he's doing there remains a slight mystery. This old man he's met is calling himself Ammon, and that is interesting in itself. There was a god Ammon, a Libyan god, who had an oracle, and that oracle was actually visited by Perseus in the myth and also by Hercules, and that served as inspiration for Alexander the Great to go and visit that oracle in real life. So I'm wondering if this man is meant to be some kind of seer. Is he connected to it? Certainly there is a figure, Ammon, who does appear later on in Perseus' story in the Greek myth. So perhaps he's synonymous with that figure.
Can you explain what happened to me tonight?
The gods of Olympus are mysterious, and their motives are erratic. My advice to you, sir, return to the calm of Seriphos as quickly as you can.
But my mother's last wish was that I would restore her homeland.
So my mother's last wish was to restore her homeland. It seems from this that Danaë is dead. And that's surprising because she didn't immediately sort of die in his early adulthood. In the Greek myth, she went on to be pursued by another man, a new suitor. So I'm wondering, they seem to have killed her off early. And Ammon's advising Perseus to go back to where he came from, and he's refusing. He's saying, no, I'm going to carry on. And I think in that we're being shown an early insight into his heroic spirit. You know, it's the making of a hero to be able to want to go on and to face adversity where it would be easier and safer to go back from where he came.
Certainly Joppa would be a better starting place than some remote little island.
Well, in that case, at least you ought to get something more becoming to wear, don't you think? I mean, something more fitting, more appropriate to a prince, so to speak. Out here, get out. And look at this. That looks well. That will do very well.
Wonderful. So Perseus has got his uniform for the rest of his journey, the rest of his life, and it's a cat fur-covered cloak of some kind. It doesn't sort of immediately bode well, does it, as an item of clothing? But we'll see.
Your sword.
Sword?
Welcome to Joppa, Prince Perseus.
I think with the Prince Perseus, we're remembering here where he came from, we're remembering his background, we're remembering he is actually a person of some standing who's got to have some kind of future to look forward to. And I think he's gazing at his reflection here with quite a lot of pride. And I think going forward in his journey, we're going to see a lot more of that coming out. I have to say, looking at this young hero, I'm reminded slightly of the modern film Troy and the sort of slightly vacant look of Brad Pitt playing Achilles. I think we're getting something quite similar here, actually, in this young Perseus figure. He spotted something shiny and nice.
With the sun. Beautiful morning.
Magical. I found this here by the statue.
That is a likeness of the goddess of love. It's very remarkable.
So he's found the sword by a statue of goddess of love, who's Aphrodite, one of the Olympians. We saw Ursula Andress in one of the earlier scenes.
A sword, eh?
Yes. But this is no ordinary sword.
Well, it's a strange metal. It's neither brass nor iron. It's like no metal that I have ever seen. By the gods.
So this sword is made of a metal which Ammon is saying is almost divine. It seems godlike, and I think that's probably a fair guess on his part. My interpretation, it hasn't actually been said here, is that this armour would be made by Hephaestus, the craftsman god. He was the god who usually made special armour for heroes going forth. So, for example, the armour of Achilles in the Iliad was made by Hephaestus. If you get special armour, that's where it's coming from. So it's not surprising that the material should be unrecognisable to man.
There's a shield. And over there's a helmet.
I was right to say by the gods. Who else could make a sword that slices through solid marble without leaving the slightest blemish on the blade?
If the sword can do that, then what about the helmet and the shield?
We better, that is, you better find out.
Goodness, so instead of an invisibility cloak, we have an invisibility helmet. He's put it on and he's disappeared. Amazingly, thousands of years before Harry Potter.
Whoa!
There was a reference to a a helmet that made you invisible, and it was given to Perseus. We find this in ancient tellings of the myth of Perseus. Usually this helmet was given to him later in his quest, together with some other bits and pieces that were relevant to that particular journey. I'm wondering why he's been given them quite so early. In some versions of the story, it's Hermes, it's the messenger god who delivers them to him. But in most cases, it's these specific nymphs who provide Perseus with the equipment that he needs, rather than these Olympian deities who are being represented by the statues here. They also give him some very specific things before his quest, which was to get the head of the Gorgon Medusa. So specifically, they give him actually a kind of wallet, a bag in which to hold this head, because they're nothing if not practical. What Perseus is going to do with these particular items prior to that, whether he's going to take these off to the Medusa or whether it's for something else, we'll have to see.
When the full moon shines on the water, then they say Pegasus, the last of the winged horses, comes to drink.
Listen. Look, there.
I see nothing.
Over there. Pegasus.
So we have Pegasus, the beautiful winged horse here. Pegasus in Greek mythology was associated with water, because when he landed, where his hoofs went down on earth, supposedly water would spring up. So some associate his name, partly because of where he was born as well, with the Greek for spring. We've got him here going to sort of drink, I think, in a spring, so maybe that's a very oblique reference to that tradition. The most jarring thing here, to my eyes, is the fact that Pegasus in Greek myth was actually born together with his brother, another winged horse, out of the blood spilt by the Gorgon Medusa when she was decapitated by Perseus. And yet we have Perseus here witnessing the horse, and yet we haven't seen any decapitation of Medusa taking place yet. Has he done this in the past, or is this coming up in the film? It's a slightly odd chronology. They don't seem to be sticking to the traditional chronology as enjoyed by the Greeks. So another thing that's strange about this scene is the idea of Perseus wanting to get hold of Pegasus and ride him, because in traditional Greek myth, we don't really find Perseus at all as the rider of Pegasus. Pegasus instead had another hero who rode on his back, and that hero was Bellerophon. And Bellerophon rode Pegasus in order to confront the Chimera, one of the mythological monsters, and also to try and ride up to the heavens to see the gods. And Pegasus rode up without Bellerophon and ended up on Olympus and being the sort of collective horse within the stables of the gods, and he looked after the thunderbolt of Zeus and was later sort of celebrated by being commemorated as a constellation in the night sky. So this tradition of myths doesn't seem to be at play within this scene. This is bizarre. So here our Sleeping Beauty is a princess, Andromeda, and she's the daughter of a queen called Cassiopeia and a king, Cepheus. And it seems she's having a kind of out-of-body experience, but it could be a dream. Not quite sure. She is travelling somehow outside of herself in order to meet with this rather scary-looking vulture. She's clearly in a trance, and she's entering a cage. None of this has any foregrounding in Greek mythology. This seems to be an invention, I think probably in order to showcase some of the special effects that Ray Harryhausen was capable of achieving. I mean, the vulture is quite an attractive creation, and the idea of her being sort of in this cage, being pursued by Perseus on the back of Pegasus. I think this is just showing off. I think this is showing different modes of flight. It has no relation to the ancient Greek myths whatsoever. They've flown over a lot of mountains. We're sort of in the region of North Africa, vaguely here, I think. She's leaving her cage. So Andromeda is now confronting another kind of monster. He's bedecking her with jewellery.
A gift for you.
This all looks very un-Greek, I have to say. This doesn't look like anything you'd expect from the realm of Greek myth. Okay, so this is frankly bizarre. This is a monster who wasn't always a monster. They're calling him Calibos, and they're saying he's a son of Thetis, and she was the nymph that we saw in that earlier scene on Mount Olympus with the other gods and goddesses. And Zeus transformed this son into this swamp-dwelling monster, Calibos. And Calibos seems to have had some history with Andromeda, wanted to marry her. And that's obviously not going to come about now he is in this form. Calibos is an invention. This whole part of the film seems to be based on nothing ancient that I can identify, at least. I wonder what he's doing here.
A new question?
No, I beg you. No more bonfires.
A new question for a would-be hero.
Mark and remember.
Calibos, I implore you. Lift your curse from Joppa and release my soul. Show pity, Calibos, as you loved me once. Be merciful now.
So they're playing now with this tradition. They're saying that Andromeda had to get married to a suitor who could guess the right answer to a riddle set by Calibos. And she's talked about sort of not wanting any more bonfires, and that's because all of these suitors who've tried to win her hand and got that riddle wrong have actually been essentially burned at the stake. They've been put to death. And this is a riddle that's been set by this Calibos, this mysterious mythological creature, which, a bit like the Kraken, has no relevance at all to the tradition of Perseus and Andromeda. So it's quite a surprise to encounter this character, especially at this point in this film. Maybe we can put it down to the fact that she is asleep and this is just all a dream.
I give her to the man who has saved us from despair. I give Andromeda the most beautiful of all prizes, more beautiful than anything on earth or in heaven, even more lovely than the goddess Thetis herself.
Wow, we've got complete disaster on Perseus and Andromeda's wedding day. So Perseus and Andromeda have got together. Perseus has answered the riddle that's been set by this fictional Calibos character, and he's won her hand. And we've got her mother there, the queen, who seems to be sort of almost officiating, but she's there anyway, and she's speaking, and she's made this terrible boast. She said that her daughter is more beautiful than Thetis. And this sounds a bit strange. obviously Sian Phillips, wonderful actress, but I think as a phrase that sounds quite strained to my ear. And I think the reason for that is it's loosely related to the ancient Greek myths. In some tellings of the ancient myth, Cassiopeia, the queen herself, boasts that she herself is more beautiful than the Nereids. And the Nereids were these daughters of Nereus, who is this sort of sea figure, and they're sort of nymph daughters. And one of these nymph daughters was Thetis. So we've kind of gone into the specific here rather than the general Nereid whole family of them. There are other sort of versions of the myth where the mother boasts that her daughter Andromeda is more beautiful than the Nereids. So they're interchangeable. So anyway, this idea of a boast, of more being a human being more beautiful than a goddess, is in itself, it's hubristic. What are we seeing straight away? We're seeing the vengeance of Thetis herself being represented by a great statue. And in the Greek myths, we don't literally have some great statue of Thetis with her head rolling off in complete despair at what she's hearing. But the overall story actually rings true.
Hear me, vain and foolish mortal woman. You dare compare your daughter's beauty to mine, and in my own sacred sanctuary. You will repent your boast, and the cruel injury you have inflicted on my son, Calibos. In 30 days, on the eve of the longest day of the year, your daughter Andromeda must be taken to the sacrificial rock at the edge of the sea, there bound and chained to the stone. She must be unknown to man, a virgin, a sacrifice suitable for the Kraken.
So there goes her wedding night, poor Andromeda. This idea of making an offering of Andromeda to appease the Kraken. As we've seen, the Kraken has no place in this story at all. I'm going to exchange Kraken for Cetus, the idea of the sea monster, because in the traditional Greek myths, you do find Andromeda being chained to a rock and being terrorized by the Cetus. So I now think that earlier theory I had about them just swapping these two mythological monsters is probably cracked. We've got her mother here, sort of absolutely in despair, rightly.
She must be delivered to the Kraken at the setting of the sun, or else the Kraken will destroy all Joppa and everyone within the city. For the insult you have done to me and the cruel injury inflicted on my son, I demand the life of Andromeda.
So I think we've got a slight deviation from the Greek myths here. What we find actually in some of the Greek myths is Ammon, this figure, this old man who Perseus had met earlier. We kind of see him in the background here. It was actually at his suggestion that Andromeda was chained to a rock as an offering to the gods to appease them after Cassiopeia made this egregious boast of her daughter being more beautiful than the Nereids. So he has sort of some relevance here to the story. However, this idea of her being an offering to the Kraken, as we've seen, is slightly ridiculous, and the chronology seems slightly off as well.
Someone coming. Oh.
So Ammon, who I think we can now say is related to the Oracle of Ammon, I mentioned earlier, he's advised Perseus to go and approach the Stygian witches. And Stygian witches is an interpretation they're using in this film for what the Greeks called the Graeae. And these were 2 or 3 sisters who had always looked old, even when they were young, sort of typically shown to be quite hideous. Although there's one ancient poet who says that they had very lovely cheeks, so there was some redeeming feature for them. But looking at these figures here, we're seeing these very grey-haired old Graeae. The interesting thing about them in Greek myth, which they clearly are following here, is that they actually shared one eye between them. In the Greek myth, they also shared one tooth. They had to pass them around and share them out. So here they seem to have their own teeth, maybe not the best teeth, but they've got their own teeth, which is something, but they are having to share around this eye. So it has strong comedic potential, I think, this scene.
Who has the eye? I do. Give it to me now. I want to be the first to see him. What do you see, sister? What do you see? Yes, a young man, not plump, but well made.
I'm rather excited, it seems, at the approach of Perseus. Perseus is coming to them because Ammon is saying, seek them out and they'll be able to help you on your next stage of this quest. And specifically, Ammon in this film seems to have said that he needs their help in being able to kill the Thetis. In the traditional Greek myth, it wasn't really sort of tied to that. He went to them specifically over how to defeat the Gorgon Medusa, and that wasn't really directly connected at this stage to the myth of rescuing Andromeda. These were sort of separate things which they fudged together. They fudged together a lot of different myths into this film, so it can actually be quite confusing to follow it.
We are honored by your visit.
What can we do to help you?
I need your advice.
Then you must come a little closer. You see, my two sisters here are somewhat deaf.
I still can't hear him. Suppose we were to move a little closer to him.
So in this film, Perseus is helped along by a trusty owl. He couldn't have Athena's owl, so he has this owl called Bubo, who doesn't exist in the original legend, but it's a great mechanical owl that's been made by the Harryhausen team, and I actually quite like this owl.
What's wrong? It's gone! The eye! Where's it? Drop the eye!
Oh no! Where's the eye? You have it!
Never fear. It is safe.
Give it to us. Give it back.
On one condition.
Anything. But we must have it now.
You will have it. After you have answered my question.
Ask them. Quickly.
How may a mortal man face and defeat the Kraken?
The Kraken is invulnerable. 100 men could not fight.
An army could not kill him.
Nothing is invulnerable. There must be a way.
Perhaps one way.
So in the Greek myth, Perseus is trying to extract information from these Graeae, and in order to do that, he actually does bargain with them over the eye. So in that respect, this aspect of the scene is quite accurate. But what he wants to learn from them is the whereabouts of the Gorgon Medusa. And what isn't really made clear in this scene is that the Medusa is actually a sister of these Graeae.
Give us back the eye! Give us the eye! We must have it!
Here. Catch.
Here we're seeing Perseus throwing this eye back at them, having extracted some information for his quest. But he throws it back at the rats and on the ground, whereas in most of the Greek mythological traditions, you find him throwing the eye further away. So he specifically throws it into the lake of Lake Tritonus, which is a lake in North Africa. And he does that specifically so that the sisters cannot then warn the Gorgon Medusa that he is on his way. So I think we're slightly missing an element in this scene that would make that obvious. It seems a bit of a jump. So Perseus is heading off to find Medusa. He's been told that he needs to get the head of Medusa in order to defeat the Kraken. In the original Greek myths, this wasn't the case. He pursued the head of the Medusa because he was sent to fetch it by a suitor of his mother, Danaë. The suitor had really wanted to get him out of the way so that he could marry the mother without Perseus being there and sort of interfering with things and being an impediment. So this is quite a radical departure from the original Greek myths. So he's summoning somebody here with his horn. It's all very misty. We've got someone appearing here on the horizon. And the person we've got here is Charon, who was in Greek mythology the ferryman of the dead. He used to carry the souls of those who died across the waters of the river Styx, one of the rivers of Hades, the underworld. We've got here, he's basically presented as the Grim Reaper. He's a terrifying figure, and he's holding out his hand for some coins, because in the Greek tradition, it would be incumbent upon people to bury their dead with some coins. Often they'd place them on their eyes as payment for Charon, the ferryman, almost like their toll into the underworld. So that's what we've got here. I mean, the bizarre thing really is that Perseus is going into the underworld in order to find Medusa, because Medusa in Greek myth does not live in the underworld. In Hesiod, who's one of our earliest Greek sources, a near contemporary of Homer, she's described as living beyond Oceanus. And Oceanus was a body of water that was believed to encircle the earth, almost formed a sort of perimeter of our earth. And it's quite a difficult concept to illustrate. So maybe they're thinking in this film, you know, it's easier to show Perseus going down to the underworld than it is crossing the Oceanus. It is puzzling to show Perseus travelling all the way to the underworld to encounter Medusa and to defeat Medusa. But I think with this myth, what they're doing a lot of the time in this film is to bring together lots and lots of different traditions, lots of different myths, and sort of interweave them. And we do find in Greek mythology a lot of heroes having to perform quests which involve going down to the underworld and getting something, defeating someone. So Perseus has finally reached the domain of the Gorgon Medusa. Interestingly, she's been shown here without her two sisters. In the Greek myth, she was actually the mortal sister, and she had two immortal sisters, but we're seeing her apparently on her own in this setting, in the underworld. My initial impression is she looks quite close to what I'd imagined when I read the Greek myths describing her. Very, very sort of snaky hair all around her head. And she was actually turned into this form by the goddess Athena, who was absolutely furious because she had slept with the god Poseidon in a temple dedicated to Athena. And quite likely Poseidon had seduced her or raped her, and she had absolutely no saying in this. But Medusa, nevertheless, was punished for that when she was still a human by Athena by being transformed into this horrible monster-like figure with snakes for hair. And most importantly of all, whoever she looked at, she turned to stone. So this was Athena's way of ensuring that she'd never fall in love. No one could ever fall in love with her because she'd just turn them to stone immediately. And this explains why Perseus is looking at her purely in the reflection of his shield. He knows he can't look at her straight on, otherwise he'll be turned to stone. Okay, so this is another view of Medusa. I hadn't seen the full Medusa before. This is more surprising. She has a snake's tail in this. This is a new one on me. In the ancient tradition, we don't read about Medusa actually having sort of the body of a snake as well. She's usually on 2 feet, but clearly this is going to make life a lot harder for herself in terms of defending herself against the hero, Perseus. Oh, there are the eyes. But, you know, the eyes are terrifying, but behind those eyes, those lovely blue eyes, I think, are actually quite nice. They're quite sweet. So Medusa has turned someone to stone already with her gaze. I know we're meant to be sort of rooting for Percy in this, but I do actually feel quite sorry for Medusa, particularly because I know her sort of backstory and that she was a victim in all of this, and now she's been decapitated. I think what's interesting from this perspective is the fact that, I mean, the Greeks typically saw people who were aesthetically beautiful and people who were ugly exactly the same. They think they were sort of monstrous in themselves. And I think that's really reflected in a lot of their myths, including this particular myth of the Gorgon Medusa. Well, there finally is the bag containing the head. He got it somehow. And we've got this strange Calibos figure returning. I really question the relevance of Calibos to this film. He's an invention, he doesn't really need to be there. Has he been invented because we've got a female monster, we've got the Medusa, and there needs to be a male counterpart to kind of add balance to the film? Perhaps that is the reason that he's here, but otherwise it seems that Perseus has enough to contend with without having Calibos there to face as well. Okay, we've now got blood oozing from this bag onto the ground. And in the Greek myth, the blood that came from the severed head of Medusa did actually have magical properties. It had generative properties. Things grew from it. But what on earth is growing from this? Okay, we seem to have scorpions growing out of the blood of the severed head of Medusa. Huge scorpions, God. These are enormous. So we don't get scorpions in the original Greek myths, but we do get Pegasus. I mentioned earlier Pegasus, the great winged horse. He and his brother were born out of the severed head of Medusa in some versions of the myth. But we've already had Pegasus play a big part in this film already, so we can't have that happening here. So what do we have instead? Scorpions, obviously deriving from the spilt blood of the severed head of the Gorgon Medusa. They just get bigger and bigger. I'm trying to think, is there a Greek myth in which somebody fights scorpions? Off the top of my head, I can't think of one. Perhaps they missed a trick. Got the Kraken here, or the Thetis as I prefer to call him, and he is approaching Andromeda, who's still chained to a rock, poor Andromeda. And this is because the gods have sent Thetis and Poseidon really against the city because of the proud boast of Andromeda's mother, Cassiopeia, that her daughter is more beautiful. So she's still here. What's going to happen? Is Perseus going to arrive? Is he going to save her? He is enormous, I have to say. I think I'd look a lot more terrified than Andromeda at this point. Okay, so here comes Perseus and Pegasus together. See, Ammon looks very upset, despite the fact that he's actually responsible effectively for Andromeda being on this rock. Quite like this scene of Pegasus flying over the battlements. I think cinematically it's very attractive. I think the Kraken himself, he's really grown on me. I have to say, since the first scene, I kind of feel he's quite a sort of enigmatic character in himself. I'm quite drawn to him. I don't know why. Maybe I've been watching this film for too long. Okay, so he's got his bag here and he's fiddling with the knot. I think maybe his sword might come in useful at this point. Okay. So he's gonna hold out the head of Medusa, isn't he? I mean, there are some versions in which he does actually use the Gorgon Medusa's head to turn this monster to stone, but that wasn't sort of his primary mission in the original myth. Okay, so the head has been saved by the owl, again an invention for this film. Even though the head has been severed, it's still snaky and alive and flashing eyes, and poor Kraken doesn't know what's hit him, I don't think. So he's turned to stone. And yet he's too large, I think, a statue to remain standing in the sea. So almost like that earlier statue we saw in the city of Argos, we've got a statue, huge monumental statue, falling, crumbling before our eyes. I think at this stage we should remind ourselves that the primary mission of Perseus with the head of Medusa was to return this head to the suitor of his mother, who'd given him this quest, rather than to save Andromeda. But it's true that in the Perseus myth, we do find him saving Andromeda as well. So we've just had two things which have been kind of fudged and stuck together somewhat. So I really like this bit. We've got Pegasus being revived, being reborn out of the sea because the head and the blood has reached the water. So the filmmakers clearly knew the traditional myth that Pegasus was born out of the blood of the severed head, but instead they couldn't do that. They had the scorpions instead. But now he's come back to life. He's got a new lease of life because of that big splash of the head.
Perseus and Andromeda will be happy together. Have fine sons. Rule wisely. And to perpetuate the story of his courage, I command that from henceforth he will be set among the stars and constellations. He, Perseus, the lovely Andromeda, the noble Pegasus, and even the vain Cassiopeia. Let the stars be named after them forever. As long as man shall walk the earth and search the night sky in wonder, they will remember the courage of Perseus forever. Even if we, the gods, are abandoned or forgotten, the stars will never fade. Never. They will burn till the end of time.
So that's the end of the film, and it's a shame they didn't continue a bit longer, actually, because the after story of this is equally exciting. Andromeda and Perseus were married. We've seen that sort of start to happen, but they had their married life together. They had lots and lots of sons. And at some point they returned to Seriphus and later to Argos, where Perseus started life. And when he was there, he managed to reconnect with his grandfather, King Acrisius, who we saw in that opening scene. And remember, Acrisius had been terrified because this prophecy from Delphi had told him to beware the child born to his daughter Danaë. Well, inadvertently, Perseus did end up killing his grandfather Acrisius because he actually hurled a discus at him during some games and he died like that. So the whole thing had been sort of disastrous really for Acrisius, but we didn't get to see that in the end of this film. But that's not really a criticism, because I have to say I have actually really enjoyed watching this film. It departs from the Greek myths on quite a lot of different fronts, but I think I'm not particularly uncomfortable with that. I don't think you can analyse this film in the same way as you would a film that's based on history, on historical sources. This is a film that's been informed by myths, and myths were forever changing. They were forever being retold by different poets and different writers. So I think they've really sort of taken ideas and they've run with them. And I think, you know, the cast are good, particularly the Olympian gods. I'd like to have seen Andromeda speak a little bit more. I don't think she said very much in this film. I think as a hero, Perseus is maybe a little bit dense. You know, he looks a little bit, he's not very cerebral. hero, whereas the gods and goddesses seem to have their heads screwed on, apart from Thetis, who obviously lost her head in that devastating scene with the statue, but I'll put that behind me. Overall, as a film, the CGI, pre-CGI, what I mean, the pre-CGI, these special effects are very Harryhausen, I think really make this film because they seem almost charming, I think, to someone who's used to seeing films with a lot more sort of high-powered effects behind them. If there were two things I'd do differently in this film, it would be to get rid of Calibos. I don't really see what his story adds to this overall. The other thing I would do is to call the Kraken for what the Kraken really is, which is the Thetis. Thetis, the sea monster. It seems ridiculous that you just interchange these names like this for no particular reason. It's quite confusing to the classicist, and it should be confusing to everybody actually who knows any kind of Scandinavian folklore as well. So I'd have done those differently, but nonetheless, I enjoyed the film and I would definitely watch it again. I've really enjoyed doing this deep dive into the film Clash of the Titans. I hope you will subscribe to the History Hit channel and you'll see me doing a lot more historical analysis of other films as well, and lots of other material besides.
Hi there, I'm Dan Snow, and if you love history, you know that History Hit is on a mission to bring the past to life. Every week, we travel the world to film original and in-depth documentaries. And now History Hit has launched a YouTube membership to give you access to even more films released weekly. You heard it here first, folks. Join now to make sure you never miss out on exclusive documentaries on topics like newly discovered shipwrecks or the clash of gladiators. We cover all periods, from Pompeii to D-Day. Click the join button below this video and see for yourself what History Hit has to offer. We can't wait to have you join the team.